What does justice look like in a galaxy ruled by fear? In the Imperium of Man, justice wears black armor, wields a shotgun, and has complete authority to restore order as they see fit. The Adeptus Arbites. Adeptus Arbites. There's a couple different ways you could say it. The Arbites. The Adeptus Arbites. They're coming for you. They're in your neighborhood, and they're gonna be coming for you. They're knocking down your door, and they're looking for your heretic friends and your family. The Adeptus Arbites is a millennia-old institution which dates back to the days before the Horus Heresy. They're basically responsible for enforcing imperial law, the Lex Imperialis, which is the Emperor's word, essentially. And they enforce it across the entire Imperium, all 1 million worlds. Well, at least like a lot of them, maybe not all of them. To the Adeptus Arbites and their militarized police, the arbitrators represent the ideal law enforcement in the galaxy, or its sick, twisted perversion. What is it that they stand for exactly in this grim, dark universe? Well, in a galaxy where any world could be under threat of invasion or unknowingly host parasites of any form, whether that be heretic, mutant, or xenos, from the lowliest dregs of the underhives to the nobles of the highest spires, you cannot trust a single person. In the event of an uprising, whether that be from down low or on high, you must have a swift and immediate response that is incredibly effective. And that's going to be where Adeptus Arbites members come into play. I gotta decide, am I going to call them Arbites or Arbites? What am I going to call these guys? The Arbites? Basically, if you don't have an effective police force in the event of an uprising, you got to quash it earlier before it gets unruly and out of hand. Otherwise, a valuable imperial world may fall to chaos, xenos, or who knows what, the mutant. Are you a mutant? Get on the ground. Whether it fall to public discontent or heretical influence, you gotta respond fast. And that is where the Adeptus Arbites come into play. When stationed on a world of the Imperium, an arbitrator, an agent of the Adeptus Arbites, plays 3 roles: judge, jury, executioner. Think of them as the judges in Judge Dredd, which is something that they are heavily inspired by. And they also are pretty reminiscent of RoboCop in a lot of ways that I think is pretty cool. Pretty cool with that, you know, that sleek steel armor. Ooh, wow, so sweet. Each imperial world in the Imperium has its own government, their own laws, and their own local law enforcement. But arbitrators, the Adeptus Arbites, are separate from that and elevated above it. They are more like a federal agency, hence the Fed hat. And they're dedicated to enforcing broader laws that apply to the Imperium as a whole, rather than local laws that apply strictly to one world, because they oversee that everything is running efficiently on an Imperial world. They want to make sure that the government is meeting its tithes, whether that be financial, resource, or military, like personnel. Many governors might be pretty uncomfortable by the presence of an arbitrator, because it's kind of like they're the hangman, baby. They might string that rope around your neck if you step out of line, or if you fail to meet your expectations, then you're the problem and they will deal with it. Their oversight is, they're breathing down your neck, baby. They're breathing down your neck and you feel it hot and heavy on you. The Arbites are the guillotine, and they just need the slightest indication that you have stepped out of line or become lax in your duties, consorted with Xenos, or entertained the idea of the warp, and they'll drop the blade on the back of your neck. It's not uncommon in the Warhammer universe for any form of law enforcement to be referred to as Arbites, even if it's just local enforcers, due to the Adeptus Arbites being the galaxy-wide institution, and it's easier to just remember that there's an arbitrator versus remembering the name of every local kind of law enforcement group. But the thing is, even if you refer to local law enforcement as Arbites, it's going to be pretty misleading, because nobody is quite up to snuff and the caliber of an arbitrator, which is basically going to be like your riot police, your SWAT officer, something like that, maybe FBI, a combination of all of those compared to just a beat cop. A beat cop, running around stopping little petty thefts, versus the arbitrators are going to step in for the big stuff. Arbitrators have canine units. They're called cyber mastiffs. They're basically these augmented robot dogs that they will ruin you. So who gets to be an arbitrator? It's not something that you can just sign up for or apply for at your your local precinct. In the 41st millennia, lives are cheap. And so the value of your life depends highly on your class, your status, and ultimately the person giving you orders. Some commanders value and cherish every life in their service, seeking to prolong their lives and their value as long as possible. This would be somebody like Colonel Commissar Ibram Gaunt from the Gaunt's Ghosts, the Tanith First and Only, while some also only value your life as long as it's a body between them and the enemy, a body to soak up las fire, take the shots so that they can survive. And that would be somebody like the hero of the Imperium, Caiaphas Cain. Ultimately, however, death is inevitable, and more often than not, it's likely going to occur on the battlefield. When officers die in battle or a noble is assassinated, something like that, sometimes children are left behind, orphans. And these orphans are often going to be taken in not by the Astra Militarum. Who will step in and take care of these orphans is the Adeptus Ministorum, which is the state church for the Imperium. And so what they will do is take in these orphans from fallen officers and nobles and send them to the Schola Progenium. Ooh, the Schola Progenium. What is that? What is that? It's a boarding school for rich kids and spoiled brats. The Schola Progenium is an institution that's responsible for the raising, the education, and the training of these orphaned youth into becoming something useful to the Imperium. That can mean a lot of different things. Basically, they will forge you into a weapon or a tool for the Imperium. You're essentially being groomed into service. You can kind of think of the Schola Progenium kind of like it's the ROTC if they just wanted to make sure that your parents were dead, so nobody could really complain about how you're being treated. Those who are the absolute best, they might find themselves recruited to various elite institutions like the Commissariat to become a commissar. If you're psychically active, you might be so lucky that you're not killed immediately or sent to Terra to be sacrificed to the Emperor, and you get, you might become a sanctioned psyker, or maybe you might become an acolyte of the Inquisition. That's high reaching though. That's very high reaching. There are many other paths to take, whether that just be a normal priest. One of these many other paths is that you might be recruited into the Adeptus Arbites. And so when dealing with an arbitrator, you're likely dealing with someone whose parents died in service or was a noble before being whisked away to this boarding school. They might find themselves prone to abusing whatever power they find themselves in. And so if you're going to be a SWAT or riot police, something like that, police brutality is not super uncommon. I'm sure despite all that, most of them are still relatively well-adjusted individuals, right?
Get on the freaking ground, dude. I'm gonna blow you away. I'm gonna blow you to smithereens. Kingdom come.
This is where things can become a bit murky, because while the Adeptus Arbites are absolutely essential on many worlds, it's a grim, dark future. Life is not good for many people, and so rebellion is very prevalent across the galaxy. And so the Arbites frequently need to step in to set everything straight and get things back to being productive. Where does the letter of the law and spirit of the law separate? When arbitrators stray into what's called abstractionism. This is when arbitrators begin dispensing justice based on what they think could be a violation of law or what they think could become a violation of law. This person's probably going to do that, so I'm going to act now to prevent it from happening in the future. What's that Tom Cruise movie? Minority Report. It's basically the Minority Report. In the Minority Report, it's okay. It's encouraged for law enforcement to stop crimes before they happen. But in Warhammer, give them this. It's not okay. But some may do it anyways. The arbitrators that stray into abstractionism usually find the letter of the law to be inadequate. Why wait for something to be cleared up when you can just act now and prevent a problem from happening in the future? Why wait for a complicated legal process when you can offer a solution that's expedient? Somebody who might be an okay like pop culture reference for what abstractionism might be would be somebody kind of like Frank Castle. The Punisher from Marvel, I would say, fits into this mold. Ex-cop who just kind of goes and dispenses justice how he sees fit, not how the law is intended. But it's a slippery slope when you stray from what you stand for. You as an arbitrator may think that you're acting in the Imperium's best interest by acting preemptively. You may also be securing your death as a heretic if it's ever discovered that you have been guilty of the crime of abstraction. How can this be used against an arbitrator? Perhaps your actions are caught on a vid feed by a cartel who then present that to you saying, hey, now you're going to do what we want you to do, or we're going to turn you in. And then your options are, okay, do I die for heresy, or do I just serve this cartel on the side of also doing my normal duties? After years of acting out of heresy, serving a third party, not the Imperium, and just generally breaking down your morality, you might see that you become the very thing you sought to destroy. This isn't every arbitrator, and it's probably not even common, but it's the risk you run when you are in a world that is so crazy and grimdark and things go wrong and people turn all the time. Here's an effective parallel that I think paints the picture pretty well. The Arbites are often utilized by the Inquisition. The Inquisitors fall into two camps usually. There are the Puritans and the Radicals. Puritans in the Inquisition do not embrace the warp or the use of the enemy's tools at all, versus those that are radicals typically stray into using the warp. They exercise the use of these tools because it is the most effective way of combating chaos or whatever it is that they're going up against. It's said that any Puritan given long enough will become a radical, and it's perhaps any radical given long enough might become a traitor or a heretic. Because some who fall to heresy and are outright blatant abusers of corruption and are corrupted might still perceive themselves to be serving the Imperium in some dark, warped way. Like I said, these cases are few and far between, but that's not to say it can't or won't happen. All it might take is one bad actor to paint a bad picture for the rest of the arbitrators. In the Chronicles of Uriel Ventress Book 1 Nightbringer, arbitrators, or at least terrorists masquerading as arbitrators, caused a rebellion on the imperial world of Pavonis. The Pavonis Incident. On Pavonis, to say things were tense would be an understatement. There were riots against the planetary governor and open demonstrations around the city. The Ultramarines had even been deployed to the system following the governor's inability to meet tithes. Captain Virgil Ortega commanded the Arbites on Pavonis during a demonstration, and the orders were to maintain peace without violence, but this would soon go horribly awry. Due to the likelihood that violence would turn this otherwise peaceful protest into something abhorrent, they maintained peace by mostly just staying to the perimeter and observing what was going on and making sure nothing was going too far. What Ortega saw, however, would change everything, because a squad of arbitrators advancing through the square, they advanced towards the statue of the Emperor, where protesters were beginning to climb and demonstrate on the statue as well. One protester on the statue was shot by these advancing arbitrators. This led to Ortega's worst fears being realized as the crowd quickly became violent. Ortega and his squad of arbitrators pursued this other squad that had essentially broken down this entire thing from a protest into a riot. The other squad had done what they needed to do and they were fleeing, and so Ortega's squad followed them, ultimately following them to their evacuation point where they were fortified with heavy weapons. The Ultramarines had to step in to quell these fake arbitrators. It turns out these were terrorists who had gotten a hold of Arbites' equipment, but the damage was already done. To the crowd, it was the arbitrators that had made things violent, and they were going to continue the escalation. This was all part of a plot where the planet's PDF, their planetary defense force, was revealed to have turned traitor. It would only be a couple hundred members of the Adeptus Arbites that would hold them back outside of the gates. These SWAT, these riot police, whatever you want to call them or refer to them as, fought the PDF to the last man, and it was eventually Ortega himself who would sacrifice his own life detonating their munitions to prevent them from falling into the hands of the traitorous PDF. It's not a perfect example, but it's an example of how perception is everything. On Pavonis, the Adeptus Arbites might have been the good guys, but to the civilians, they just marched into the square and started blasting people apart. As a reader of the books, the Arbites might be seen in a couple different ways. They might be portrayed as the first line of defense against chaos, insurrection. Sometimes they might just be fodder that are usually all dead by the time the Astra Militarum arrives to quell whatever rebellion or heretic uprising there is. To the civilians of the Imperium, however, you do not want to get in their way. If the Arbites come and knock on your door, it's going to be for a very specific reason, and it's not going to be good, most likely. It's going to be very uncomfy. If you know that arbitrators are coming to your neighborhood or your hab block, it's best to just stay indoors. Stay indoors to stay away from the arbitrators, and stay indoors to stay away from whatever it is they're hunting. You may appreciate what they do and the ferocity with which they dispense the Emperor's justice, but more likely than not, you're going to want to appreciate it at a distance. Whether you like them, fear them, or hate them, you really can't argue. They are absolutely dripping with aura and atmosphere thanks to their combination of looking like if Judge Dredd met RoboCop met a medieval knight. Like, whoa, whoa, whoa. know. I'm not an expert on these things. I'm not an expert in Warhammer lore or anything like that. It's just something that I like. And so I want to talk about it when I think something's cool. And I think the Adeptus Arbites are cool. The fact that there's these riot police that, you know, if the governor gets out of line, they're coming for you. If heretics come to town, they're coming for you. If mutants come from the Underhive and start causing shenanigans up in the market districts, anything like that, our Adeptus Arbites, they're coming for you. The reason I am extremely excited about the Adeptus Arbites is because I'm a huge fan of the game Warhammer 40k Darktide, and on June 23rd, 2.5 years after the game released, it's getting its first DLC class. And that is going to be an arbitrator, baby. We're gonna get to be an arbitrator with our cyber mastiff, just shooting along, taking out heretics. I can't wait to build a character that's just crazy riot police, just blasting the hordes of Nurgle away. This is going to be the first Darktide class to introduce friendly AI, something that we only saw prior as from the Necromancer in Vermintide 2, and I'm hoping that we're going to see more stuff like this in the future. Ideally, what I would really like to see is, I was hoping our first class might be somebody from the Adeptus Mechanicus, whether that be a Scutari or a tech priest, and I think that if they continue with friendly AI, having a tech priest with combat servitors would be sick. I'm working on a video on why I think Darktide is such an incredible game and perhaps one of the best horde shooters out there. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for watching this epic video. We're going to be coming back at you soon with something different, something a little different. I've got a game review in the works for a really cool co-op PvE game that I think you're really gonna like. It's something I'm excited about, and you know, put your hands where I can see them, heretic scum.